हेलो माय डियर फ्रेंड्स, कैसे हैं आप लोग। उम्मीद करती हूँ आप सब अच्छे होंगे। अदर पीपल्स धर्मा फ्रॉम द बुक थिंक लाइक अ मॉन्क रिटन बाय जय शेट्टी, चैप्टर 5, पर्पस, पार्ट 2. The Bhagavad Gita says that it's better to do one's own dharma imperfectly than to do another's perfectly. Or, as Steve Jobs put it in his 2005 Stanford commencement address, your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. In his autobiography, Andre Agassi dropped a bombshell on the world. The former world's number one tennis player, eight-time Grand Slam champion, and gold medal winner, didn't like tennis. Agassi was pushed into playing by his father, and though he was incredible at the game, he hated playing. The fact that he was tremendously successful and made loads of money didn't matter. It wasn't his dharma. However, Agassi has transitioned his on-course success into his true passion. Instead of serving aces, he is now serving others. Along with providing other basic services for children in his native Nevada, and Andre Agassi Foundation runs a K-12 college preparatory school for at-risk youth. Our society is set up around strengthening our weaknesses rather than building our strengths. In school, if you get a 3 as and a D, 3 A's and a D. All the adults around you are focused on that D. Our grades in school, scores on standardized tests, performance reviews, even our self-improvement efforts all highlight our insufficiency and urge us to improve them. But what happens if we think of those weaknesses not as our failures but as someone else's dharma? Sister Joan Chittister, a Benedictine nun, wrote, "It is trust in the limits of the self that makes us open, and it is trust in the gifts of others that makes us secure." We come to realize that we don't have to do everything, that we don't do everything, but that what I can't do is someone else's gift and responsibility. My limitations make space for the gifts of other people. Instead of focusing on our weaknesses, we lean into our strengths and look for ways to make them central in our lives. Here are two important CVHs. First, following your dharma doesn't mean you get a free pass. When it comes to skills, you should lean into your strengths. But if your weaknesses are emotional qualities like empathy, compassion, kindness, and generosity, you should never stop developing them. There is no point in being a tech wizard if you are not compassionate. You don't get to be a jerk just because you are skilled. Second, a bad grade in school doesn't mean you get a ditch the subject altogether. We have to be careful not to confuse inexperience with weakness. Some of us live outside our dharma because we haven't figured out what it is. It is important to experiment broadly before we reject options, and much of his experimentation is done in school and elsewhere when we are young. My own dharma emerged from some experiences I found extremely unpleasant. Before, I thought that class at the ashram, I had a distaste for public speaking. When I was 7 or 8 years old, I took part in the school assembly where kids shared their cultural traditions. My mother dressed me as an Indian king, wrapping me in an ill fitting sari like get-up, and did nothing for my awkward body. The minute I walked on stage, kids started to laugh. I can't carry a tune for the life of me. And when I started to sing a prayer in transliterated Sanskrit, they lost it. I wasn't even 2 minutes in and 500 kids and all the teachers were laughing at me. I forget the lyrics and looked down at the sheet in front of me, but I couldn't read the words through my tears. My teacher had to walk out on the stage, put her arm around me, and led me away as everyone continued to laugh. It was mortifying. From that moment, I hated the stage. Then, when I was 14, my parents forced me to attend a public speaking drama after school program. 3 hours, 3 times a week. And 4 years gave me the skills to stand up on stage. But I had nothing to talk about and took no pleasure in it. It was and still am shy, but that public speaking course changed my life because once that skill connected to my dharma, I ran with it. After my first summer at the ashram ended, I was not yet a full time monk. I returned to college and decided to try my hand at teaching again. I set up an extracurricular club called Think Out Loud, where every week people could come to hear me speak on a philosophical, spiritual, and or scientific topic, and then we did discuss it. The topic for the first meeting was material problems, spiritual problems, solutions. Material problems, spiritual solutions. I plan to explore how, as humans, we experience the same challenges, setbacks, and issues in life, and how spirituality can help us find the answer. Nobody showed up. It was a small room, and when it stayed empty, I thought, what can I learn from this? Then I carried on. I gave my talk to the empty room with my full energy because I felt the topic deserved it. Ever since then, I have been doing the same thing in one medium or another, starting a conversation about who we are and how we can find solutions to our daily challenges. For the next meeting of Think Out Loud, I did a better job of distributing flyers and posters, and about 10 people showed up. The topic for my second attempt was the same, material problems, spiritual solutions, and I opened a discussion by playing a clip of the comedian Chris Rock doing a bit about how the pharmaceutical industry doesn't really want to cure diseases. It actually wants us to have a prolonged need for the medications that it produces. I tie this to a discussion of how we are looking for instant fixes instead of doing the real work of growth. I have always loved drawing from funny and contemporary examples to relate monk philosophy to our daily lives. Think Out Loud did just that every week for the next 3 years of college. By the time I graduated, the club had grown to 100 people and become a weekly 3 hour workshop. We have all got a special genius inside of us, but it may not be on the path that opens directly before us. There may be no visible path at all. My dharma was not in one of the job tracks that were common at my school, but rather in the club that I founded there after a chance assignment at the ashram hinted at my dharma. Our dharmas don't hide, but sometimes we need to work patiently to recognize them. As researchers Anders Ericsson and Robert Poole underscore in their book Peak Mastery, requires deliberate practice and lots of it. But if you love it, you do it. Picasso experimented with other forms of art but kept painting at his focus. Michael Jordan did a stint at baseball, but basketballs were where he really thrived. Play hardest in your area of strength, and you will achieve depth, meaning, and satisfaction in your life. Align with your passion. In order to unveil our dharma, we have to identify our passions, the activities we both love and are naturally inclined to do well. It's clear to anyone who looks at the quadrants of potential that we should be spending as much time as possible at the upper right in quadrant 2, doing things that we both good and at the love, but life doesn't always work out that way. In fact, many of us find ourselves spending our careers in quadrant 1, working on things that we are good at but don't love. When we quadrants of potential, skill but no passion, skill and passion, no skill and no passion, no skill but passion. Question: How can we move more of our time and energy towards section 2, doing things we are good at and love? Have time to spare. We hop over to quadrant 4 to indulge the hobbies and extracurriculars that we love, even though we never have enough time to become as good at them as we would like. Everyone can agree that we want to spend as little time as possible in quadrant 3. It's super depressing to hang out there, doing things we don't love and aren't good at. So the question is, how can we move more of our time toward quadrant 2? Doing things we are good at and love at. You will notice that I don't discuss the quadrants in numerical order. This is because quadrant 1 and quadrant 4 both offer half of what we want, so it makes sense of discuss them first. Quadrant 1, good at but don't love. Getting from here to quadrant 2 is easier said than done. Say you don't love your job. Most of us can't just leap into a job we love that miraculously comes with a generous salary. A more practical approach is to find innovative ways to move quadrant 2 within the jobs that we already have. What can you do to bring your dharma where you are? When I first left the ashram, I took a consulting job at Accenture, a global management consulting firm. We were constantly dealing with numbers, data, and financial statements, and it quickly became clear that a talent for Excel was essential in order to excel in my position. But Excel was not my thing. In spite of my efforts, I couldn't force myself to get better at it. I just wasn't interested. As far as we're concerned, it was worse than mucking out the cow's stalls. So, while I continued to do my best, I thought about how I could demonstrate what I was good at my passion. At my passion was wisdom and tools for life like meditation and mindfulness. So, I offered to teach a mindfulness class to my working group. The lead managing director loved the idea, and the class I gave was popular enough that she asked me to speak about mindfulness and meditation at a wide summer company wide summer event for analysts and consultants. I would speak in front of 1,000 people at Twickenham Stadium, the home stadium of England's national rugby team. When I got to the stadium, I found out that my at the podium was sandwiched between words from the CEO and Will Greenwood, a rugby legend. I sat in the audience listening to the lineup, thinking, crap, everyone's going to laugh at me. Why did I agree to this? All the other speakers were at the top of their fields and so articulate. I started to have second thoughts about what I had planned to say and how to deliver it. Then I went through my breathing exercises, calmed myself down, and 2 seconds before I went on stage, I thought, just be yourself. I will do my own dharma perfectly instead of trying to do anyone else. I went up, did my thing, and afterward the response couldn't have better. The director who had organized it said, I have never heard an audience of consultants and analysts stay so quiet. You could hear a pin drop. Later, she invited me to teach mindfulness all across the company in the UK. This was a tripping point for me. I saw that I hadn't just spent 3 years of my life learning some weird monk only philosophy that was irrelevant outside the ashram. I could take all my skills and put them into practice. I could actually fulfill my dharma in the modern world. P.S. I still don't know how to use Excel. Instead of making a huge career change, you can try my approach. Look for opportunities to do what you love in the life you already have. You never know where it might lead. Leonardo DiCaprio hasn't given up acting or producing. Yet he also directs significant energy toward environmental advocacy because it's part of his dharma. A corporate assistant might volunteer to do design work. A bartender can run a trivia constant. I worked with a lawyer whose true passion was to be a baker on the Great British Bake Off. That goal felt unrealistic to her. So she got a group of her colleagues obsessed with the show and they started baking Mondays, where every Monday someone on her team brought it in something they did made. She still worked. That goal felt unrealistic to her, so she got a group of her colleagues obsessed with the show and they started baking Mondays, where every Monday someone on her team brought in something they did made. She still worked just as hard and performed well at her job, and she found it slightly tedious. But bringing her passion to the water cooler made her team stronger and made her feel more energized throughout the day. If you have two kids and a mortgage and can't quit your job, do as the law did and find a way to bring the energy of your dharma into the workplace, or look for ways to bring it into other aspects of your life, like your hobbies, home, and friendships. Also, consider why you don't love your strengths. Can you find a reason to love them? I often encounter people working corporate jobs who have all the skills required to do good work, but they find the work meaningless. The best way to add meaning to an experience is to look for how it might serve you in the future. If you tell yourself, I am learning how to work in a global team, or I am getting all the budgeting skills I will need if I open to skate shop one day, then you can nurture a passion for something that may not be your first choice. Link the feeling of passion to the experience of learning and growth. Psychologist Amy says Newski from the Yale School of Management and colleagues studied hospital cleaning crews to understand how they experience their work. One crew described the work as not particularly satisfying and not requiring much skill. And when they explained the tasks they performed, it basically sounded like the job description from the personal manual. But when the researchers talked to another cleaning crew, they were surprised by what they heard. The second group enjoyed their work, found it deeply meaningful, and described it as being highly skilled. When they described their tasks, the reason for the distinction between the crews started to become clear. The second crew talked not just about typical custodial chores but also about noticing which patients seemed especially sad or had fewer visitors and making a point to start a conversation or check into them more often. They related incidents where they escorted elderly visitors through the parking structure so they wouldn't get lost, even though the custodians technically could have gotten fired for that. One woman said periodically switched the pictures on the walls among different rooms. When asked if this was part of her job, she replied, "That's not my part of my job, but that's part of me." From this study and subsequent research, Zesniewski and her colleagues created the phrase job crafting to describe what employees do to redesign their own jobs in ways that foster engagement at work, job satisfaction, resilience, and thriving. According to the researchers, we can re engineer our tasks, relationships, or even just how we perceive what we do, such as custodians thinking of themselves as healers and ambassadors. The intention with which we approach our work has a tremendous impact on the meaning we gain from it and our personal sense of purpose. Learn to find meaning now, and it will serve you all your life. Quadrant 4, not good at but love. When our passions aren't lucrative, we deprioritize them. Then we feel frustrated that we love an activity but can't do it well. on frequently enough to fully enjoy it. The surest route to improving skills is always time. Can you use coaching, take courses, or get training to improve at what you love? Impossible, you say. If I had time to do that, believe me, I would. We will talk about how to find non existence time in the next chapter. But for now, I will say this: everyone has time. We commute, or we cook, or we watch TV. We may not have 3 hours, but we have 10 minutes to listen to a podcast or learn a new technique from a YouTube video. You can do it a lot in 10 minutes. Sometimes, when we tap into our dharma, it carves out the time for us. When I first started making videos, I worked on them. After I got home from my corporate job, 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, I focused on editing 5 minutes video for a long time, and return on investment was pitiful, but I wasn't willing to write myself off before trying to make the most of my skill. In the years since, I have seen people monetize the weirdest things. Spend any amount of time on Etsy, and you will be amazed at how many people have found ways to make money of their passions. However, if the world is sending you a very strong message that it won't pay for or does not otherwise need or want your passion, then fine. Accept that there is a critical need for soccer in the world, but there is no need for me to play soccer. Still, the soccer matches I organize at Akencha were the highlight of my week. If it's not your dharma, it can still give you joy. Quadrant 3. Not good at, don't love. Do whatever you can to crawl out of his soul sucking quadrant. You will always have unpleasant chores, but they shouldn't be the biggest part of your life. If at all possible, you should work toward outsourcing the chores in this category. Hurt the pocket, save the mind, and remember, just because you don't like it doesn't mean nobody likes it. Can you work out a tray with a friend or colleague where you take on each other's least favorite tasks? If you can't offload the chore, remember the lesson I learned at the ashram. Every task is an essential organ. None is less important than the others, and none of us is too important to do any chore. If you think you are too good for something, you succumb to the worst egotistical impulses, and you devalue anyone who does that chore. When you are satisfied in your dharma, you can, without envy or ego, appreciate others who are good at another skill. I have great respect for people who can do Excel. I just don't want to do it myself. When I encounter doctors or soldiers or people in any number of other careers, I think that extraordinary. It's amazing, but it's not me. ट्राई दिस, ये मैं ना ट्राई दिस शॉर्ट्स में डालूंगी दोस्तों, आप वहाँ से ज़रूर देखिएगा. Quadrant 2, Vedic personality. We want to live in Quadrant 2, where we spend our time using our talents to do what we love. If we aren't there, we examine the problem the monk way. Instead of looking at specific skills you have developed and specific activities that you love, we look beyond them to their roots. The Bhagavad Gita contemplates dharma by dividing us into 4 personality types, what it calls varnas. There are 4 varnas, and knowing your varna tells you your nature and competence. In relatively recent history, during the 19th century, when British leaders imposed their own rigid class system on Indian society, the varnas emerged as the basis of the caste system. Though caste, a hierarchy of job categories, were based on the varnas. This is a misinterpretation of the text. I am not talking about the caste system here. I believe that all of us are equal. We just have different talents and skills. My discussions of the varnas is about how to harness these skills and talents to live to your fullest potential. The different personality types are meant to work together in a community. Like the organs in a body, all essential and none superior to the others. Varnas aren't determined by birth. They are meant to help us understand our true nature and inclinations. You are not creative just because your parents are. No one Varna is better than another. We all seek different types of work, fun, love, and service. There is no hierarchy or segregation. If two people are both acting in their best dharma, living for the service of others, then neither is better than the other. In a cancer researcher bet is a cancer researcher better than a fireman? Try this, the Vedic personality test. This simple test is not an absolute determination of your personality type, but it will help us you seek out dharma. See the appendix for the Vedic personality test. द वर्नास हम लोग इसे कवर करेंगे नेक्स्ट वीडियो में. बाय फॉर नाउ दोस्तों. आप मुझे कमेंट करके बता सकते हैं इसके बाद नेक्स्ट बुक मैं कौन सी चूज़ करूं, कैसे किस टाइप्स की बुक्स चाहिए आपको एज अ रीडिंग, फिक्शनल या फिर और कुछ, अगर मैं ट्राई ज़रूर करूँगी. बाय फॉर नाउ दोस्तों.